Hi, everyone. We'll get started in just a minute. Okay, so it seems like a majority of you have joined us. So thanks so much for being with us this evening to talk about financial aid and programmatic scholarships. My name is Alice Young. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm the Director of Admissions for Outreach and Recruitment in the JD Admissions Office, and I'm joined by Amanda.
Hi, everyone. My name is Amanda Pursoon. I'm the Director of Public Interest Financial Support in the Financial Aid Office, and my pronouns are she, her.
So this whole week, we have a series of webinars talking about paying for law school. So some of you might have been able to join us yesterday for a general overview of financial aid, resources to pay for law school, and an overview of our general gift aid and scholarship process. So in the webinar today, we're going to be focusing on 3 specific programmatic scholarships. Our Dean of Admissions and Financial Aid is also going to be hosting an open office hours tomorrow evening as well. So if you have any specific questions, there's not going to be a presented information session. So it's just a time for you to ask any questions related to financial aid and scholarships. And then on Thursday, we're going to be talking specifically about our loan repayment assistance program, and Amanda's going to be presenting that for you. And why are my slides not moving? Oh, there we go. Okay, perfect.
Okay, and I'm going to do our acknowledgement of land and place. We recognize that UC Berkeley sits on the territory of Huchun, the ancestral and unceded land of the Chochenyo-speaking Ohlone people, the successors of the sovereign Verona Band of Alameda County. This land was and continues to be of great importance to the Muwekma Ohlone tribe and other familial descendants of the Verona Band. We recognize that every member of the Berkeley community has and continues to benefit from the use and occupation of this land since the institution's founding in 1868. Consistent with our values of community, inclusion, and diversity, we have a responsibility to acknowledge and make visible the university's relationship to Native peoples. As members of the Berkeley community, it is vitally important that we not only recognize the history of the land on which we stand, but also we recognize that the Muwekma Ohlone people are alive and flourishing members of the Berkeley and broader Bay Area communities today.
Thanks, Amanda. So we'll go through just a quick overview of what to expect from the session today. First, I'll be just going over financial aid. What does that mean, and a general timeline that you can follow. Then we're going to be talking specifically about our programmatic scholarships. So the Berkeley Law Opportunity Scholarship, and there'll be a chance for you to ask any questions. The Public Interest Scholarship that we just launched last year, and then the Center Scholars Program, and then hopefully we'll have time at the end as well for any other questions. When you do have those questions come up, the best way to ask them is by using the Q&A feature at the bottom of your screen. So you can just write in those questions, and we will go through and ask them when we're talking about those specific scholarships during the session. So you can also feel free to hold your questions until the end as well. So let's get started with just talking about financial aid timeline in general. So what is the actual tuition and cost of attendance? So here I've laid it out for California residents. Our tuition is about almost $57,000 a year. And that is set every year. There's a different tuition schedule. Living expenses we've estimated here at $33,540. So of course, sometimes it'll be a little bit less than that, or sometimes it could be a little bit more. And then our student health insurance is about $6,000 a year. You can get a waiver for that as well if you're covered in a parent's or a partner's health insurance, you are able to waive that. But the total amount per year that you can expect for total cost of attendance, which is tuition, living fees, expenses, books, and other supplies, is about $96,000 a year for California residents and $101,770 for non-residents. Residency is determined on campus by our registrar's office. There are some forms that you have to fill in. So if you're coming from out of state, most of the time after the first year of residence in California, our students are able to qualify for California residency purposes and save a little bit of money for their second and their third years. And so what are the different types of aid that we offer? So there's general entering student gift aid. And so for that, we're going to look at your overall admissions application that you've submitted. And for admitted students, we send you our supplemental gift aid application, which is basically our sort of in-house financial application that we've developed that asks about your current financial circumstances and also growing up if there are any sort of financial hardships that you or your family may have experienced. We also have some self-nominated scholarships that you actually have to go in and select in our admissions application. So those would be the ones that we're going to talk about in a minute: the BLOS, the Berkeley Law Opportunity Scholarship, which is for first-generation college graduates, and our Public Interest Scholarship. And both of those are full tuition awards for all 3 years. Most of our students do also have to take out loans to supplement tuition or to pay for living expenses while they're in law school. And for grads that are going into public service after they graduate, we do have a loan repayment assistance program as well, which Amanda is going to talk about much more in depth on the webinar on Thursday. So if you're thinking about doing public interest work, I definitely recommend tuning in for that. What's a general timeline that you can expect, and what do you need to make sure that you've submitted when? So during the application process, if you're still just applying to law school, here are some deadlines. So for our binding early decision application, the deadline is coming up very shortly, November 15th, and the last standardized test for that is going to be by the end of October. And that does come with a guaranteed $25,000 a year scholarship. So if you get admitted via binding early decision, you already have that gift aid that's already automatically granted to you. You can also be eligible to apply for BLOS or the Public Interest Scholarship as well, although most of our early decision applicants end up with that $25,000 a year award. December 15th is the deadline. You should keep in mind if you're a first generation college graduate, that is our deadline to apply for BLOS. So you can either apply using our regular decision application or the binding early decision application. Just make sure you submit it by December 15th, that you've taken a standardized test. For most of you, that's going to be the LSAT. But if you do qualify to apply with the GRE or GMAT, just make sure you've taken that by the end of November. And make sure that you include the BLOS essay with your application. And then our final deadline is just for our regular decision application, which is February 15th. And we require that you've taken a standardized test by the end of January. And in that, all you need to make sure that you do is complete the scholarship section and just make sure you check the box and follow the instructions if you're looking to apply for either the BLOS or the Public Interest Scholarship. So what happens after you apply? So if you are admitted, then we send out those decisions sort of between October and March. So we are reviewing applications right now, and we send out decisions on a rolling basis every few weeks. So the earliest you may hear is this week or possibly next week through about March or early April. And then for early decision, those are going to be sent out on December 6th. So they're all sent out on the same day. So if you have been admitted, congratulations. At that point, within a few days of your admissions email, we'll send you our supplemental gift aid application, and we allow you 3 weeks to complete that. Even if you feel like you may not qualify for need-based aid, we'd still recommend completing the SGA because it also asks about eligibility for some of our named awards that have specific criteria that you may be eligible for. So we recommend that anybody submits the SGA. Then we're going to review your SGA to assess for any sort of need-based aid. And we're going to go back and look at your general overall admissions application to assess for merit. Every law school sort of defines merit differently. Some use a specific scale, LSAT plus GPA. Ours is much more broad. So we're not just looking at your academic record or your LSAT score, but we're looking at your overall strength in the application of what you would bring to the class. And those are awards you could hear back from us anytime from about a week after you were admitted up until early March. So we don't include scholarships in your initial email or in your admissions packet. So definitely keep an eye out on your email, and those go out on a rolling basis. So it's not uncommon for somebody to be admitted and then maybe a month later hear back from us about scholarships. That being said, we're not able to offer every one of our admitted students a scholarship. So we do have a reconsideration process. That opens mid-March and it closes on May 1st. So that process is, if you haven't heard from us and we weren't able to offer you an initial award, or maybe you did get an initial scholarship from us, but you also have another scholarship offer from another school, you'd really like to attend Berkeley and you want us to take a look at it, you can submit our reconsideration form with the other offer or with any other information that we would need to know about your financial situation. And we respond to those and either award you an increased award or tell you we're not able to offer you a scholarship. So there is a process later on for you to submit any additional information to us. So that was a very, very quick overview of the process. If you want a lot more information, I encourage you to review the webinar yesterday that will be posted onto our website very soon, which goes over our entire financial aid and scholarship process. So at this point, I'll move on to specifically talking about the Berkeley Law Opportunity Scholarship. And I'm also going to ask Amanda if she can to just drop the link in the chat for the BLOS page so that you all can check it out. We have profiles of our current students who are opportunity scholars. So what is the BLOS, the Berkeley Law Opportunity Scholarship? So it's for first generation college graduates. So if neither of your parents received a bachelor's degree, a 4-year degree, you would be eligible to apply for BLOS. And what does it cover? It covers full tuition and fees for all 3 years of law school. Because we don't have GPAs or class rankings, all you need to do to maintain the award is just to stay in good academic standing for all 3 years. You also have guaranteed acceptance into our pre-orientation program, which happens about the week before classes start in August. And that's a program generally for about, it ranges every year from about 40 to 60 students from underrepresented backgrounds, first generation students, or those that might have been out of school for a while. And it's sort of a primer for law school. So you take a mock exam, they teach you how to outline and brief a case. And it's also a great social opportunity to meet others. Every year, our students rave about pre-orientation and say that everybody should do it. And so for the BLOS, you actually get guaranteed acceptance into that program because so many people want to do it. It is limited. You also get opportunities throughout the year to meet your fellow cohort of students. And we also plan activities for faculty and staff and alumni. So we just, a couple weeks ago, I hosted a picnic for all of our BLOS students to just get out in a social setting up in Tilden Park, which is a really great area for hiking. We did a little hike and got to know each other. The dean has also hosted dinners at his house before, specifically for BLOS students. So there are sort of those kind of programming components throughout the year as well. And then just to reiterate about the application, just make sure you apply by December 15th with either application, and you do have to submit a 1 to 2 page essay. So the prompt for the essay is pretty broad. We just want to know, how do you think being a first generation college student has shaped your perspective, and how will that perspective contribute to the Berkeley Law community? A common question that we get is sort of how this should be different from anything else in your application. So you can definitely discuss content from your personal statement, diversity statement, or a why Berkeley Law statement if you're including that, but it should be a unique independent essay specifically focusing on your identity as a first generation college graduate. So some of our BLOS applicants discuss obstacles they may have faced on your journey toward law school, your contributions to your community, history of leadership or advocacy, and what kind of impact you hope to make at Berkeley Law in the greater legal profession. So when we're reviewing applications specifically for BLOS, what are we looking for? We're looking for distance traveled in the non-literal sense. So how far have you come? What kind of obstacles have you faced to get to law school? Potential contribution to the Berkeley Law community and the general legal profession. So what do you see yourself doing at Berkeley Law? What kind of groups do you see yourself being involved in? Will you be a student leader? And what kind of impact do you hope to have with your JD? And what do you see yourself doing after law school? And then we look for need in the financial or mentoring sense. So we want BLOS to benefit those who have had limited resources in the past, both sort of in a mentorship sense and a financial sense. So there are no specific criteria or like financial aid that you would need to, a financial aid application that you would need to submit. But we are looking for those who have experienced some financial hardships in the past. And the timeline for BLOS, so as I've mentioned, December 15th is the deadline to submit your application. First, your application will be reviewed in our general admissions process, and that's not going to vary at all. At that point, it's not being reviewed for BLOS, it's just being reviewed for admission. Once you have been reviewed for admission, and if you were admitted, in February, we look through everybody who's been admitted and who has applied for BLOS, and we narrow it down to finalists that will be invited in March to actually come and interview for the award at the school or virtually. So the interviews are a required component. We also have a required dinner reception as well, or a virtual reception, depending on the public health situation, where you get to meet with our staff, our faculty, alumni, and current BLOS students as well, so that you can kind of get to know the community more. And then once you've interviewed, you'll find out by the end of March if you are awarded the Opportunity Scholarship. If you are not offered the Opportunity Scholarship, there are many, many resources at the law school for first-gen students. So it doesn't stop there. We have a first-generation professionals group, which anybody who is first-generation college or first-generation professional, like if your parents didn't go to law school or didn't go to graduate school, that's a great group, and they put on events throughout the year. We just had a couple of judges come to the school a couple of weeks ago, and they specifically met with the first-generation professionals group. And then they also have a mentorship program where they'll pair first years with a second or third year student, and they'll also match you with an alum who's also first gen. I already mentioned our pre-orientation program, which I always recommend. We have a great academic skills program as well. So all of our first year students that are placed in MAUD automatically are assigned a tutor that meets with them weekly. It's optional, but most of our students do take advantage of that to talk with a student who did particularly well in that class the first year and the strategies that they use to succeed in their first year of law school. And then many of our affinity organizations also have their own social and mentorship programs as well. So we have many, many student organizations like Queer Caucus or Women of Color Collective, La Alianza, Law Students of African Descent, and a full list is on our website if you're looking to see what other organizations you could join. So I think that's my overview for BLOS, and I'll take a pause there to see if we've gotten any questions specifically about BLOS.
Not specifically yet, if anyone wants to ask, but someone did ask, and maybe if people haven't been checking the Q&A, how if you apply and are admitted BED and then also apply for BLOS or the Public Interest Scholarship and were to be awarded one of those, how might the scholarship awards interact with each other? And I answered that you would receive the greater of those scholarship awards. So yes, instead of getting $25K per year, you'd get a full tuition award.
Yes, that's absolutely correct. Okay,
I don't see any other questions.
On?
Sure. Okay, I'm going to be talking about our new public interest scholarship. Alice, you can go to the first page. Okay, perfect. Okay, so this scholarship is brand new. Our first cohort of students are 1Ls this semester, and they'll be graduating in 2024. It is a full California resident tuition and fees scholarship minus the student health insurance plan, and it lasts for all 3 years of law school. And aside from the financial benefits, there are additional opportunities to engage with the public interest community of students, staff, faculty, and other scholars who will be in your cohort and other cohorts. And there's up to 10 scholars each year. Really, since this scholarship is so new, I wanted to explain some of the goals of the program. I mean, primarily it's to reduce the financial barrier of going to law school and of being a public interest lawyer for students and graduates. Typically, people working in public interest and public service careers are going to be making lower incomes than someone who goes into big law. So this scholarship is aimed to help facilitate you being able to do the career that you want to do after law school a bit easier. We also want to make it easier to be a public interest student. We want to provide resources and facilitate connections between you to help you grow your personal public interest community while you're at law school. And then, of course, we want to continue to build and strengthen our public interest community at Berkeley Law, which is already very strong and vast and so spread throughout the law school. Yes, thank you, Ross. Okay, so the application process, it's pretty simple, not as involved as BLOS. Basically, you should just indicate your interest in the scholarship on the application for admission. There should be a little box there for you to check. You should make sure that your application materials, like your personal statement, any optional essays that you submit, and your resume really demonstrate your experience and your interest in public interest work. And then there's no deadline to apply specifically for the scholarship. It's just the deadline to submit a JD application, which is February 15th. And the scholarship is awarded at any time during the application cycle. So there's not a specific deadline or timeline that you'll be hearing from us. You could hear from us anytime during the admission cycle. What we're looking for is mostly a really strong commitment to public interest work or a deeply felt personal connection to a public interest field. If you're wondering maybe what does public interest mean, generally it's like doing work for a nonprofit or in government, or if you're doing work serving underserved or under-resourced people, groups, or causes. Maybe that's the research that you're doing in an academic institution, and maybe you're doing organizing or advocacy work. There's a lot of ways that you can be doing public interest work. And if you're thinking about like what type of field can you be in, it's really so broad. I mean, some examples here: environmental law, racial justice, housing and homelessness. As long as you're serving the public, that's what we're looking for. We really want you to have a high likelihood of ending up in public interest after graduation. The scholarship doesn't have a requirement that you do end up in public service work after graduation or that we ask for the funding back, but the intention is to serve those students who are very strongly committed to going into public interest work later on. And like any scholarship, we're looking for a strong academic record and other qualities that make you a standout scholarship contender, like your leadership skills. Have you been innovative or taken initiative in your school or your workplace or your community? And what I always like to see is, what is your potential to make an impact here at Berkeley Law? Do you foresee trying to make changes to our community? Are you planning on creating something or being a leader here? If you are, we definitely want to hear about that. Even if you don't get the public interest scholarship, or even if you do, there's so many other ways to engage with the public interest community here at Berkeley Law. If you're looking for academic or research opportunities, we have our public interest in social justice certificate and our race and law certificate that will direct your course offerings and help you engage in these specific topics more intensively. We have research centers and institutes and initiatives that will allow you to focus on a subject area that you're interested in. If you're hoping to build your community, I would definitely start with the Henderson Center for Social Justice. It is one of our research centers, but it's definitely a hub for a lot of our public interest and social justice community here at Berkeley Law. And they put on so many great events about putting the things you learn in your doctrinal classes into practice and thinking about how these things are, how the concepts you're learning about are put in context with what's happening in the real world. Of course, there's also student orgs, affinity groups, and journals where you'll be able to build your community. If you're thinking about doing experiential education, I'm sure you've read about our in-house clinics and our East Bay Community Law Center. There's tons of opportunities to do pro bono work, including our student-initiated legal services projects and our alternative service trips. And then we have our field placement program where you can do externships here in the Bay Area or somewhere else in the US or even abroad. And a lot of people ask me, what financial support can you get as a public interest student at Berkeley Law? We have guaranteed summer funding if you're working in a public interest internship over the summer. All you have to do is do 25 hours of pro bono service work sometime during the year. We have some post-grad fellowships that can last anywhere from 4 to 12 months to help support you in your first year of working after law school. And we also have our loan repayment assistance program, which I'm going to be going into extreme depth on Thursday if you're more interested in learning about that. But that is all I have for now. Any questions about the public interest scholarship, or is it time for Alice to talk about center scholars?
Yeah, we just got one question about if you've already submitted your application, could you go back and apply for the public interest scholarship, which I just responded to say, if you didn't select yes in the scholarship section, just email us and we can update your application.
Perfect.
Okay, so let's go into our last part, which is just going to talk about center scholarships. So center scholarships are awarded generally in the reconsideration timeframe. So it's going to be later on in the process in March or April. And we generally offer about 10 awards per center that participate in the Center Scholars Program. So we have 5 different centers that participate in it: the Center for Law, Energy, and the Environment, the Berkeley Center for Law and Business, the Berkeley Center for Law and Technology, the Henderson Center for Social Justice, and the Human Rights Center. So there is nothing that you need to do in the application itself or in our scholarship section to apply for these. These are going to be awarded to applicants that have a strong commitment in one of these areas. So that's mostly going to be demonstrated in your narrative pieces of your application, in your Why Berkeley statement, in your resume, but also in your academic record as well, as far as did you study a specific area? Did you complete research? Did you get a master's degree in a particular area? So these are basically awards for standout admitted students in a particular field. So if you are very dedicated to the environment, you've done research in the field, or you've worked in something related to the environment, environmental law or environmental policy, you might be a really great candidate for the CLE Center Scholar. The awards vary. They're typically about $20,000 to $30,000 a year. And then there's also programming throughout the years that our center directors will tell you more about. So they often do welcome events to welcome the incoming cohort of scholars, and they may invite you to select dinners or other meetings throughout the year as well. As I mentioned, yeah, there's no separate application. There's no interview process for that. You should just make sure in your application that you've demonstrated a particular interest or a commitment to one of those fields of study. And they are usually awarded later in March or April as part of our reconsideration process. Okay. That was a general overview of our programmatic scholarships. So we'll take a moment to pause if you have any questions about something that we talked about, or maybe something that we didn't cover that you have questions about. And of course, if you can't think of anything right now, you're always welcome to email us at admissions@law.berkeley.edu with any follow-up questions, or go to our office hours tomorrow. Okay, well, it looks like we haven't gotten any other questions. So thank you so much for joining us tonight, and we hope to see you at a future event.
Thank you.